You may have heard of the Villages. It's the conservative bastion of support in Florida, basically the heart of Trump country, which is probably why videos like these bode really poorly for Trump and Republicans. According to the Democratic nominee for Congress in Florida's 11th congressional district, Barbie Hardin Hall, over 1,000 golf carts made their way to the Sumter County Supervisor of Elections office to hand in their ballots for Democrats down ballot. You'll notice, too, that the golf carts visible in the video are adorned with Harris Wall signs or flags. Now, she was joined by a neighboring member of Congress, Maxwell Alejandro Frost.
When we vote, we win. When we fight, we win. When we vote, we win. How's everybody doing today? I am so blessed to be here. I'm Congressman Maxwell Frost, proudly representing Florida's 10th Congressional District in the United States Congress.
And also the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Florida, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, made an appearance too.
When I say don't mess with my people, I'm talking about my mother. I'm talking about our parents, our grandparents that have fought their entire lives to contribute to Medicare, to Social Security, so that they can retire with dignity. Don't mess with my people, Rick.
Meanwhile, just to give a clear contrast of what's going on in Florida, here's a boat parade for Trump. And you might notice that his supporters aren't exactly shy about putting their support for their other pet projects on full display. This is what that America First movement is all about, and they are not shy about showing it. Now, as far as Florida is concerned, the most recent polling from Marist shows Harris trailing Donald Trump by 4 points, 47-51, and Debbie Mucarsel-Powell trailing Rick Scott by only 2 points, 48-50, which is to say, yes, Florida is an uphill battle, but the Senate race is clearly still within the margin of error, meaning Rick Scott may very well be down. Here's Debbie Mucarsel-Powell showcasing the fact that her race is indeed in play. The Emerson poll just released on Friday shows Rick Scott at 46% and you at 45%, with 9% of respondents undecided. That would suggest then, to your earlier point, that Florida is actually in play. So what do you say to folks who've written off Florida?
Well, they're not paying attention is what I say to them. And look, that poll is just one of many polls that have shown that I'm basically tied with Rick Scott at this point. And here's what I want people to understand. We haven't even been on TV yet. We're just starting our communications plan. We've been very strategic. We've been using the limited funds that we have to communicate with voters. We have been building a grassroots movement, and people in Florida are rejecting the extreme policies that have been coming out from Washington, D.C. by Rick Scott, by people like Rick Scott, but mostly from Tallahassee, right? I mean, people here are tired of the attacks against education, banning books, taking away the freedom for people to be able to make a good living in the state of Florida. We have an affordability crisis here. People can't pay their mortgage, their rent, their insurance rates. They can't afford to send their children to school or pay for students that go into our public universities. It's becoming so unaffordable. And now they're taking away a woman's right to choose. And so Floridians have been organizing. We have been building a grassroots campaign, and it showed in the primary, the solid primary win that we had just a couple of weeks ago. And now you're seeing a poll where people now, when they know that they have a choice, they come to us very quickly. They don't want to vote for Rick Scott. They're done with his policies. And that's why people need to pay attention, because we can win the seat and we need to keep the Senate majority.
And if you need another example as to how desperate the Republicans have become in that state, consider the lies that Rick Scott has been spreading about the Democrats.
Here's what every Democrat has voted for in D.C. They've all voted to have abortion up until the moment of birth. Now, if you want to follow how that happens, you crush a baby's skull. A baby that would be born healthy, alive at 9 months, 2 minutes before, okay, it can be crushed and killed. Okay, I think that's extreme and barbaric. On top of that, all the Democrats have voted to say that a baby born healthy, alive can be allowed to put in the corner and starve itself to death.
Which, of course, garnered this response from Mucarsel-Powell.
This was a moment that was extremely disturbing. He has been spreading disinformation and some of it actually Russian propaganda for a long time. This is a man who voted to not certify the elections and after the results of 2020. And now you're watching something that we have been seeing for a long time from Rick Scott. And it's that he has absolutely no problem lying to Floridians. But these lies are so extremely disturbing. The way that he actually talks about women that for many of them have to really work to be able to have a pregnancy. But many women are now faced with the threat that if they have a pregnancy that's not developing, that it's facing a threat to their own lives, they are not able to have an abortion here in the state of Florida or terminate that pregnancy. We are living under one of the most extreme bans on abortion, a 6-week ban. Rick Scott fully supports a 6-week ban, but he's lying to these young students. This was at the University of Miami. It was during a class, a political science class that he was speaking. And I was in that classroom because I was going to speak after he spoke. And the young women in that classroom were gasping and they felt so uncomfortable. It was so disturbing. And after I spoke, so many of them came to me and they said, thank you so much for speaking the truth, for standing up to those lies. This is such a private matter for a woman, and it's part of our healthcare. It's central to our integrity. It's part of our civil rights and freedoms here in the state of Florida. And as a mom, Brian, I just was so outraged that this man was talking to young women in the way that you're all watching right now. He cannot get reelected. He wants to be Senate Majority Leader. He wants to push a national abortion ban and also ban access to IVF and contraception. He voted against those two bills just recently in the past few weeks. If he gets reelected, he's extremely dangerous. And even if Kamala Harris wins the White House, she wins the presidency, if Rick Scott and the Republicans hold the Senate, she's not going to be able to really work towards all the progress that we've already been making in this country under this administration. So I need everybody to support me in this race. DebbieForFlorida.com. Rick Scott is a self-funder. He put $64 million of his own money to barely win in 2018, only with 10,000 votes. We can win, Brian. We can win. I need people to pay attention to what's going on in Florida.
The fact is that the only way that Democrats can have a shot at winning some of these offensive pickup opportunities is if we give them the time, the money, and the resources that they need. We've seen what happens when we write off states or districts. Democrats lose. At the same time, we've also seen what happens when we invest in states and districts that we might not think are winnable. Take what happened in the aftermath of Dobbs. Democrats won in places like Ohio, Kansas, Kentucky, and Alabama. We need to fight everywhere to have a chance to win everywhere. Worst case scenario, we force Republicans to spend their money defending red seats instead of allowing them to use all of their cash on offensive plays. And best case scenario, we win. And we turn states that used to be ruby red into purple and blue seats, like in Virginia, in Minnesota, in Michigan, in Orange County, California. Democrats have the better message and the better agenda. So let's not pretend that we're somehow not entitled to win in certain areas of the country simply because Republicans might have a longer tradition of being in power there. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.